Hello and welcome to your Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is the weekly show on YouTube at this time every week where you get the latest news and information about the music teaching industry as well as a special topic each week. And today's topic is the topic of all topics for most music teachers, and that is practice. How do we get our students to practice? What do we do when students aren't practicing? We're going to dive into all of that in as much detail as we can in this short YouTube chat show. And we will also have an Ask Me Anything section. So if you have a question, type it in. Just start with the word question so that I can circle back around to all of those at the very end, no matter what they're about. Absolutely anything. Doesn't matter to me. It can be about pie. So today's topic is based on my book, which is Practice Pie. That's why I just made that weird joke. And this is a book for parents of music students. So if you haven't already read it yourself and recommended it to parents in your studio, I hope you'll do that. And I hope you will enjoy reading it yourself. I think it's a fun little read. It's very short, it's very succinct, and I think it's going to be helpful for the world. That sounds so full of myself. But what I want to do is help spread practice tips and the ability to support students to more parents, especially those who didn't study music themselves. And so that's the mission here with this little book. It's not about book sales for me, it's about spreading that message. So I hope you're on board with that, and I hope you'll help me do that. Now, today's topic is practice, and we're going to dive in right after our music teacher news. Okay, so first my personal little update. I have been working on, last week I had 2 different webinars, and we've had our member huddles, so that's been really fun. The webinar last week for Vibrant Music Teaching was about technique, and so that's what our huddles were about. We had one today and one last Friday, and I love it when members come along to those. I hope we'll have even better attendance as we go through the year, because that was the last summer huddle, which tends to be a quieter session. But yeah, hoping members who are watching or those who are about to sign up to membership, you can join us on the next huddle, and I'm really looking forward to that. Actually, our next huddle will be after the next webinar, which is with Samantha Coates. So that is going to be super fun. So Samantha Coates and I are getting together for a webinar, and those of you in other parts of the world who usually can't make my webinar times because they're too late for you, it's going to be morning time here. So it's going to be a perfect Aussie friendly time. Great for those in Europe. Not so great live for those of you in the US, but they can't all be for you guys. So that is going to be really fun, and we're doing a huddle straight after it as well as 2 days later, so that those of you who are in North America can join in on a huddle and discuss that based on the replay. So that's going to be a really fun one. But that's been my last week. A lot of stuff with the studio still. Very busy time of year. It's way more busy than when I actually start teaching, or at least that's how it feels. Is it that way for you too? The lead up to starting back teaching is so all over the place. And then I start teaching and it's like, oh yeah, okay, regular routine. It's all good. But when I'm in the lead up to it, there's a lot going on. So it's been fully in that mode, and then I start back teaching from today. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. It's going to be so great to have everyone back in lessons and learning music and improvising together and doing lots of fun stuff. So that's going to be great. But the other thing I've been doing over the past week is starting to get ready some stuff for the VMT's birthday. So I wanted to highlight this because I want members who are watching to go tell me which time suits you for an event. So you can do that in the Facebook group, VMT Clubhouse, or in the private members forum. So will you go do that for me? Here's what's going to happen on the day, and this is for members and non-members, so listen up. We're going to do the birthday party on the 20th of September. So it's going to be on the show. This is the first time I'm doing it on the regular YouTube show. We're going to do an extended show, And we're going to do something extra. I'll get to that in a second. But the extended show is going to have a lot more games and fun little surprises and prizes. I'll be giving away loads of little prizes all throughout the show. So you're definitely going to want to come along to that one, especially if you're a regular here. And one of the things I really want to do on that show is bring on a few different guests to play some games. Now, these won't be like, I'm not going to test anyone's music theory knowledge, okay? These will be fun, silly games. I won't put anyone on the spot. But if you would be willing to come on the show, meaning side by side with me, like you've seen guests be on, but for less time and no pressure to come up with any, answers to any difficult questions. Just like, who are you and do you want to play a game? If you would be willing to come on the show, I would love to have regular attendees to the show come on. That's who I would love. I might have some experts as well, but really I would love you all to come on. So if you would be willing to do that, will you email me? I would love to hear from you about that. And really, it can be anyone, and you don't need any special technical skills, by the way. You may have seen the background of how I run this show. You don't have to look at any of that as a guest. You just get a link. You can open it in a browser. It works on an iPad. It works on your computer. It's whatever. It's easier than running a Zoom lesson, I promise. You just open it up and that's it. Bingo. And then you're on and you can see. So if you'd be willing to do that and play some games with me live on our birthday show, will you email me, please? You can email support@vibrantmusicteaching.com or support@colourfulkeys.ie, whichever one's easier for you to remember. I don't mind which one you email. But maybe some of you will come on. I hope so. Please. Okay, that's my begging for that done. Carrie, I know, right? Another birthday. We are going to be 4 years old. Last year I joked that we were ready to start lessons. For most students in my studio are ready to start at 3 because they start mini musicians. Now we're ready for, most people's studios. 4 years old? Oh my gosh. Prime time to start lessons. Ready to start school here in Ireland, actually. Anyway, yeah, it's going to be really fun. So we're going to do an extended show here on YouTube. And we're going to do a little experiment as well. So there's this new platform. It's called Wonder. If any of you went to NCKP, you saw this in action, but you didn't realize it was called Wonder because it was embedded within their platform. But the way it works is you're in a kind of room and you can have areas of different discussion points, and this is going to be really hard to explain, but basically you go around and you can network with people. So if you're open to trying something new, basically all you would have to do is just show up and follow my directions. It has a lot of potential for playing games and networking in a totally different way to a Zoom call. And I just think it could be really fun. So I want to do that and give away more prizes there. The VMT vote, the members vote, is for whether that's before or after our show here. So you vote whether you want it at 2:30 my time or 5 p.m. my time, which is before or after this show, basically. Because I want the maximum number of people to attend as possible. It's not members only, but it's just the members who are voting on the time because I want to prioritize them coming along. But everyone is going to be welcome. And I really hope you'll come along to that because it's going to be fun. And I think it's going to be a totally different experience to most of what you've seen on the web. As I said, unless you went to NCKP and you experienced the networking events there, it's kind of like that. Okay, so that is the birthday. I'm planning stuff for that. If you have special ideas of stuff you wish I would do for the birthday party, hit me up. And if you want to come on the show, please email me. I would love to have you on. And it's not as scary as it sounds. And I'm always here. As I tell guests who I'm interviewing, I'm always ready to step in. So if you have tech troubles or whatever, that's never an issue because I'll just take over the screen and you can sort it out. No problem. But yeah, just a few minutes of your time to play a game. That's what I'd love. Okay, other stuff we've been doing. We posted several different great great articles on the blog on our technique theme. We also had a couple of YouTube videos here. So we had a video about comparing different piano teaching methods, which seems to have been very popular here on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, if you haven't seen it, people seem to have really enjoyed it. And several people commenting on that to say, oh, can you review this method or that method? And the answer is always going to be no, because I won't review anything that I haven't actually used. And I mean, not picked up and glanced at. I have to actually use it with a student, because that's part of how I do things. It's part of what I believe in and what I do on this channel. So the answer tends to be no, because if I don't want to use something with a student, like if I wasn't going to do that anyway, then I can't review it, because that's not how I do things. But hopefully that method comparison is useful. And what I really wanted to do with that video was give you a way of thinking through methods that you're considering using. It's not just about the methods in the video, it's about how do we analyze and compare different methods in general, I hope. So yeah, that's here on YouTube. And then one thing outside of the Colourful Keys Vibrant Music Teaching Sphere that I wanted to mention, Rosemary Penner just posted a blog about how to use Google Forms, and I wanted to call attention to it because many people ask me about the way I do my enrollment forms digitally, and I use a plugin for WordPress. And for most teachers, if you don't already have a WordPress site, like there's no sense in setting that up and adding this plugin and paying for it. I even have the premium version, like that's no. So Google Forms is a great alternative, and Rosemary Penner just posted a blog about how to use it for your studio in several different ways. So that is theunfinishedlesson.com, or Google Rosemary Penner. I'm sure she'll show up. And then next week on the show, we're talking about music teaching studio fresh starts and resets, because it's the start of a new year for many of us. Or if you're in the middle of the year down under in Australia and New Zealand, then it's a good time to refresh yourself and reset and recharge. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that next week. But right now, let's dive into some practice troubleshooting ideas. All right, so when it comes to practice and your students not practicing, it can be stressful. And that's why I wanted to do this mind trust brainstorming session right here. Okay, so what we're going to do is, it's going to be less in a way less structured. We're going to follow the format of the last section of this book, my new book, Practice Pie. And in the last section, it's called Yucky Pie. Okay, so we're looking at Yucky Pie, and we're going to take each one of the troubles that happens for parents and students at home in practice, and we're going to work together to fix it. Okay, as teachers, what could we do? This book tells the parent what they could do, but we want to work together to see what we could do on our side, right? So let's see. The first one is Soggy Pie. I'll read a little bit of the book on this one. So it says, yuck, no one wants a soggy pie. This icky and sticky state of a practice pie is usually easy to spot because your child is simply not practicing. If you're generally not at home when practice is supposed to be happening, and you think your child may be misremembering, I didn't put quotes around that, but I could have, right? The amount of time they practice, this is where having them keep a log or record their sessions may be helpful. But generally, you know that when this is an issue, you can see the sogginess of the pie before you even go to cut it. So that's what the book says, and that's directed to parents. But I'd say that to you too. Generally, you know when a student is not practicing versus struggling, right? Most of the time, we can tell. Sometimes we can't, and we lie and say we can, but most of the time we know when a student isn't practicing. So what do you do when a student doesn't practice? What's your solution? I'll tell you mine, of course. So when a student is not practicing at all, my first go-to is the parent, right? I'm going to go to the parent and ask them about it, especially if the practice has just fallen off a cliff, see if there's anything I can do or if there's something else going on in their life that I don't know about. Then I work with the parent to reestablish that routine if it's possible. However, sometimes it's not possible, and sometimes we need to accept a season of not practicing, because if the parent is, if it's that the parent has something else going on in their life perhaps, or something like that, then it's going to be difficult for them to step in, and if the child is young, well, they can't do this by themselves. So sometimes I believe we need to accept a season of soggy practice, soggy pie. We need to accept a season where parents can't support their child in practice. If it is consistently soggy, then more and more intervention tends to be needed. But I don't believe there's any point in running lessons the way we would normally when a child is not practicing. For me, it's about stepping back and saying, okay, what can I do to make this weekly lesson with this child, they are a child, right, that I'm talking about in this scenario, what can I do to make this weekly lesson enjoyable and a great musical experience for them? Because that has to be my priority. If it's making it unpleasant for them each week, and that can happen so easily. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, oh, you're a terrible teacher for the lesson being unpleasant. Sometimes it is, because we were expecting practice, none happened, and our whole plan is just, ruined. It's the soggy pie. And so if it is happening chronically, we need to stop that from happening to our lessons. We need to prevent it from becoming a nagging session, or from just becoming an unpleasant weekly experience, just going over the same things. You can teach a child who doesn't practice. Progress will be slow, but you can teach them. You can have lessons that are intentionally made for that purpose. And it's a lot more enjoyable for you, I believe, with a chronic non-practicer to just accept it and actually have fun with the lessons. And you can. But if you keep stressing about, oh, they're not practicing and they should be practicing, and going around and around in circles, that's where, that doesn't benefit anyone, does it? Let me know what you do with soggy pie, i.e. when the student is not practicing at all. Let's go on to the next issue that comes up. And this is undercooked pie. So here's what I say about undercooked pie. An undercooked pie happens when your child is putting their practice pie in the oven, but not turning on the fan or raising the temperature. They're playing, but they're not doing focused repetitions. So what do you do about that scenario? This is when a child is doing their practice. You can tell, or the parent insists that they're putting in the practice time, but it's completely unfocused and it's not getting them anywhere. What do you do in that scenario? What's your solution? Because we can insist that we've already told them how to practice, but if they're not following through on it at home, something else is going on, isn't it? So if the child isn't doing focused repetitions, if they're not actually making progress and going into a practice session with a goal, and they're not getting anywhere, that's almost worse than no practice, because they feel like they're putting in the time, right? But they're not getting anywhere. As I go through here, I'd love your thoughts on each one and how you would solve it in your studio, but I'd also love to hear what the most common troubles are that come up in your studio with practice. Is it kids just not practicing? Is it issues with the quality of practice like I'm talking about here? What do you do? So one solution for the undercooked pie, i.e. not practicing at home, is to introduce more gamified practice strategies. And that is like crossing the river, which many VMT members will know, and things like that, where it is a game and you simplify it to the point where the child actually picks it up at home. Even if it's not the ideal way to practice every single piece, you need to go one game at a time, right? Libet said, non-practice is a problem as parents don't want to pay for lessons if the child is not practicing. We can't go home with them, so there really is responsibility on the parents' shoulders. Yes, there is. And I don't want to say, I was trying not to say but there, because you are absolutely right, Libet. There is responsibility on their shoulders. However, I like to come back to what can I do. And so I'm not trying to put everything squarely on us, but this is the part we can control, right? Our actions in the scenario that we're currently in. And that might be student is not practicing, parent is not willing to help them. They're still enrolled in lessons, just for an example. Okay, so that's the undercooked pie. Practice games are just the way to go for that, to me. And continually simplifying it to the point where they actually follow through. And that might take so much simplification, depending on the student. Okay, the next one is burnt pie. It says, as I mentioned in the heat section, you'll have to read the book for the heat session, but burnt pie is one of the most common issues us teachers see. So what do you think it's going to be? Just like the proverbial hare, students are in a rush to play pieces and end up getting there more slowly because they rush to the finish and trip over themselves in the process. So we've all had those students, right? The speed demons, the ones who want to play it at full performance tempo right away. How do you slow them down? How do you convince them that they need to do slow practice, or make them do slow practice if you're able to do that? Or what's your other solution? Because if they practice at full speed right from the start, we've all seen it, what we end up doing is unpicking mistakes. That's me thinking of it as sewing, because I come from a fashion background, but you sew it too quickly and then you spend hours unpicking the stitches and it's excruciating and you learn your lesson. But the thing about the slow practice with students is, yes, they spend hours on doing it, but it's not as immediately apparent as those stitches that are clearly have to be unpicked, and they have to do it entirely by themselves with the little stitch ripper. It's much more hidden to them. It's much more opaque, and a lot of it falls on our shoulders to fix one element at a time. And they can't necessarily hear the difference in the same way that I can see the issue with my sewing when I sew it wrong. Because like the sleeve is sewed into the front of the jacket or whatever. You know when you've done something wrong in sewing because it doesn't work at all. But with piano, not so apparent because it's all down to our ears, right? Carrie, yes, practice games they can do at home, and you have to start simple and expand so gradually. That's the thing I've learned again and again and continue to learn myself. Lee said, I do have 2 young sisters that aren't at home until mom gets off work, and then it's supper and homework time, so they get very little practice in. I just work with them in lessons slower. Yeah, sometimes we just have to accept it and say, okay, if this child is either to have no music or music with minimal practice at home, how can I make this better than no music? And you definitely can. So as long as the parent is aware of the trade-off they're making, and that progress will be slower and they don't have unrealistic expectations, I don't think that's a problem. Okay, the next one in the book is dry pie. Yuck. I don't know about you, but I'd take a burnt pie over a dried out and stale one any day. When your child's playing sounds robotic and unenthusiastic, you're probably not spending enough time listening to music together. They need a rich musical environment to draw from to make their playing fun and expressive. So the dry pie is about a lack of music at home. And this is actually the video I think we posted today, or maybe it was yesterday, that I had some comments from teachers already that they didn't realize in some cases how little music was happening in their students' homes, which is a huge thing because at the very basic level, a lot of the time, now there can be other factors absolutely in this, but a lot of the time those students who can't march with a steady beat with you, who can't feel the pulse, who are rhythmically challenged in many ways without other underlying issues, often there just isn't enough music in their environment. They haven't been surrounded by it, and so they don't feel it in the same way that we did by age 3 or whatever. So we all come from different levels of music in our families. And this is one of the main reasons I wanted to write this book, was to try and get across the importance of this alongside the more basic stuff. So the book talks about routine and practice repetitions at the same time as talking about listening to music, because it's not valued enough. Parents don't see that listening to their child's pieces that they're playing, like the listening exercises we give them, and listening to music more generally, is a huge part of what's going to contribute to them being driven to continue with their practice and with their studies and being successful, because they have those tuned in ears that actively listen to different sounds and layers within music. Absolutely. Yeah, we all have those chronic non-practisers and we have to decide what to do with them. Lots of comments coming in about that. Let me know if you see this issue of listening to music as well. And I'll go on to the next one so we get through them all. Maybe that was too ambitious of me, we'll see. Anyway, next one is bland pie. Where dry pie comes from a lack of enthusiasm for music, bland pie stems instead from practice itself feeling boring. Won't read the whole thing there. So bland pie is about the actual practice being boring. Now, this one is easy to conflate, which is what I'm going into in the next part of the book. It's easy to confuse this with practice being hard or the routine not being in place, because kids will say something is boring for many reasons that have nothing to do with it being boring or not, or interesting, right? So students will say something is boring when it's too hard or too easy, or they want to play computer games because they were in the middle of playing computer games when they were told to practice, right? It seems boring by comparison, but if they were actually engaged in the right mental mode, it wouldn't be boring. What I'm talking about with bland pie is when practice actually is boring, which it can become, of course. So this is where, again, those practice games and variety in your practice can come in. And we go into 6 different examples here in the book. The next one is overworking the dough. Let me know which ones of these resonate with you and your students, because it's different for everyone. Overworking the dough is, I love for parents to be involved in their child's practice. I wouldn't have written this book if I didn't believe that parents need to be empowered to take a greater role in supporting their child's music studies. But sometimes it does go too far. And then I'm not going to read that whole thing because that's a slightly longer section, but what I go into there is I say basically, your teacher is too embarrassed to have this conversation with you if this is you, if you're an over-involved parent. It's really hard to have those conversations, right? So in the book, I basically say, this is a really hard thing for your teacher to say to you. So I'm going to say it in the book right here for them, just in case this is you. And if you are over-involved, these are the different signs. So let me know if you have any over-involved parents in your studio, because that's the flip side of all of this, right? Now, we have 2 left, so I'm going to go through them briefly and you guys can give me your feedback on them and what's the most common in your studio. So, second last one is flaky crust. This is a pie crust that is too flaky, is one that breaks apart every time you try to remove it from the dish. If you have built a practice habit more times than you can count, only to lose it after a couple of months or so, your crust is too flaky to be sustainable. So this is about those parents who are not chronic non-practisers, but chronic habit picker-uppers and then put-downers. Do you have any of those who do great for like 3 weeks and then it falls apart? And then they do great for another 3 weeks, but they can never seem to land on a habit that really works and is sustainable in the long term. The last one is chewy crust. If your child continues studying a music instrument for more than a year, one thing's for certain. At some point, they will feel frustrated. Anyone agree with me on that? This will show up differently for different children, but it will happen. Some will throw a tantrum or break down in tears, some will give up, and others will take it out on you. That's referring to the parent, but maybe also you as a teacher. So, the chewy crust is when things are hard to swallow. It's when it's hard and they're going through a particularly rough patch in terms of progress and difficulty. So, how do we as teachers help them through that? Let's consider that together. What can we do as teachers to make that easier? We can take away the practice requirement for a little while if things are really looking tough, and especially if it's going outside of the piano realm, that it's really challenging. We can work through those issues at the lesson and break it down further for them. But it's definitely a team effort when those really tricky things to overcome come up for our students. Liba said, yes, I had an over-involved parent that made her daughter pay for the lesson if I made her repeat a song. Talk about pressure for her and also for me. Oh my gosh! Where did she even get that idea? That's totally... Anyway. Wow, that's extreme. That's all I'll say. That's extremely Beth. Yikes. Okay, let me know which ones of those resonate for you, and again, you can pick up the book or recommend it to your parents if you think it'll be useful in your studio, and you can get the free videos here on YouTube if you want to check those out and send them to parents. We are going to go into the Ask Me Anything section, so if you have a question about anything at all, anything random, I'll be happy to answer them for the last few minutes here. Here we go. Alrighty, I'm just going to check if we've had any random questions so far. And you can ask your own question by typing question and then followed by anything at all. Doesn't have to be on today's topic. Okay, so two from Lydia here. So Lydia, first earlier in the show, she said, if the student is not practicing and hence hardly progressing at all, how long do you keep a student working on the same piece, and when do you allow the student to lay aside the piece? It's a great question, Lydia. So the thing for me is, if I have decided in my head or in discussion with the parent that we're doing a no practice period for a while, that I'm not even assuming anything is going to happen, like that's just, it's not that I'm telling them you may not practice, it's that it's out of the discussion, right? So if that's the case, I wouldn't be taking on things that need practicing. So the question of moving on from a piece becomes irrelevant because I'm not going to do something like that. We can do sight reading at the lesson. We can read duets together. We can do sight reading work, or read pieces that are so easy that they only need to try them a few times to be able to read them well. But we can also do composing projects. We can improvise together and learn about all sorts of music theory through those kinds of projects and play lots of games together. So it's not about... It's exactly about doing the opposite of that, right? It's not pizzas that you work on for a while, because that paradigm, that setup doesn't work if your student is not practicing. It's just not going to work. So you have to step back and say, well, what can we do if they're only showing up each week and I'm assuming no practice happens at home? Hope that helps, Lydia. And then your second question was, do you have any tips for teaching a new student who has started learning on the Simply Piano app? I've got an interview today with a family that they've learned on that app. Okay, so the thing about Simply Piano, first of all, download the trial version or whatever, don't pay for it, but open it yourself and see how it works so you have a background in where they're coming from. Just a few minutes just to see how it works. It's basically a chord-based approach. So the thing that would factor into in terms of what I do at the first lesson would mostly be within the discussion with the student on their goals, because they probably started simply piano, maybe, or maybe it was totally mum's idea, but if the student was motivated by that, then maybe they wanted to learn pop music, so that might enter into the discussion. But also I would be talking to them about, okay, you've been learning with this app, what do you feel is lacking from that, and what can I help you most with, right? So that I'm really honing in on why they're there and what the app did for them and what it didn't do for them, so that I can set my goals accordingly. It wouldn't change much in terms of what I'm going to teach them, only that it might change their goals, and that changes what I'm going to teach them. Do you see what I mean? But I wouldn't take any specific approach based on that. In my mind, they're mostly a beginner if they've learned with simply piano. Like, that doesn't really contribute to a huge amount to what I would be teaching them in general if they came to me with no specific goals in mind. I'm still going to have to start at the beginning with reading and a lot of other stuff, especially technique if they've learned with an app, which isn't really telling them much about technique. Hope that helps. Karen, do you talk to a beginner student about the music alphabet before you start identifying the keys? Okay, so that changes by age, Karen. I do talk to them about the music alphabet if they're older. So if they get the alphabet already, and by older, by the way, I'm starting some students at 3. So we're talking about like if they're 7 or 8 or older, they probably know the regular alphabet. And so that's a really useful reference point, and explaining that to them is great. If they're younger, there's just no point. At least here, and that depends largely on your local school system and what they teach and what they, in the stages they teach it at, right? But the priority here, which is probably correct, like I'm not disagreeing with them, but it's not on the alphabet in the first several years of school. And so me referencing that is just going to confuse matters. So no, I don't teach the music alphabet unless they know the alphabet, is the simple answer to that. If they don't know the alphabet, I'm just going to teach them the D key, and then the C and E key, and then the F key, and then the F, G, A, B set, right? So that's my general progression. Even if they know the alphabet, I'll introduce it to them, I'll explain it's just the first 7 letters of the alphabet, the bottom key on the piano is A, and great, we can go up the whole way. I'll have them go up and down so they practice going backwards in the alphabet, because that's obviously much harder. But then I'll still teach them to find all the D's and then all the C's and then all the E's, because as I explained to them, in piano we're jumping around a lot. So it's great to have that as a backup plan to go through the alphabet, but most of the time we want to jump to things, so we're still going to do those things, just with a bit more explanation before it. Hope that helps. And Teresa, what effective practice strategies for transfer students around age 8 and 14? Okay, so practice strategies for me largely depend on the level, not the age, is the first thing I'll say. But I would start with basic games because, okay, it depends on the transfer students and the teacher they came from. Let me say that. So if they came from a teacher who taught them other strategies, then they will be in a different headspace to if they have never really approached practice that way, is like having a plan, which many don't, right? So if that's the case, I would start with just one basic strategy, like crossing the river, or different, or like bar by bar from the end, Teresa, something like that. One strategy at a time to add to their arsenal and their toolbox, and go forward from there. It wouldn't really change for me based on age. Like I would do that same thing with an adult student, because everyone needs methods of practicing. Now, if an adult student is going to be bothered by cutesy names, maybe I'll take those off, but in a lot of cases they help us remember them, so I would just explain that to an older student. All right, I think we will wrap it up there, guys. It has been wonderful to chat with you as always. I will be back here at the same time, the same place next week, and we're going to be talking about fresh starts and resets for us as teachers and as business owners. So I'm really looking forward to that. And do remember to get in touch with me if you'd be willing to come on the show for our birthday celebration. I'll see you next week.